Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Moorestown, New Jersey, at the King of Hearts house. This is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. It's Thursday. Is it Thursday? It's Thursday. It's Thursday.
It is Thursday.
It's Thursday, and the United States is crumbling, Kaustubha. What do you think about that?
I think you look, you know, for those that can't, for those on Zoom or watching on YouTube, they can see Raghunath. You look like you stormed the Capitol and you're sitting at Nancy Pelosi's desk.
It wasn't me. You know, here we are. We grew up like in a very secure country. We have this feelings of security, almost like a superiority in our security. Yeah. It's like Rome. And it's almost like Rome is falling this year. It doesn't feel like that? Truthfully, Rome did fall, and it was around for what, 600 years? King of Hearts, 600 years-ish?
A little history,
right?
Mara,
We haven't been around that long.
Roman Empire?
Mara's got no answers for us. I don't think she learned much in that private school.
She do?
I really thought she was a deep well of history, mathematics.
I was up to a lot of trouble.
She was a troublemaker.
She
learned how to cook
with
very well.
She did learn how to cook. She was smoking cigarettes with the girls' field hockey team.
Smoking in the girls' room.
But anyway, the security, there's an interesting thing about like security. Yeah. When we hear about refugees or people suffering in, war-torn countries, it's always out there.
Yeah, right.
And it's never sort of like we're crumbling. Like we got it together. That's very sad out there. But now it's sort of like, it feels like, oh, wow, the very foundation of the structure of order could at any minute just sort of crumble. And I guess that's also the deep, deep message of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is that, we have great kings like Emperor Parikshit, and we have great queens like Draupadi, and we have great heroes that have a crumbling situation in their life, like an immediate hairpin reversal. And now what? Now what are you going to do with that? Mm-hmm. And so truthfully, all like the tragedies that have come up this year have really just like steered me back to the imminent we've all got our own like tragedy, a time bomb basically under our shirt. Like we don't even know when it's going to go off. We're like walking around with it ticking, and we try to ignore it in our sense of stability. And, we got it together. We got this. And in reality, as far as material life goes, we don't got this. Like nobody's got this. All we got is Krishna. All we got is our connection to spirit. That's all we got at any time. How you feeling? Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Another cheery good morning.
You're speaking of stability. And we hear from Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam and so on, that the different modes of nature, that there's that the Rajaguna is, through the Rajaguna, through the mode of passion, there's creation. And through Tamaguna, the mode of ignorance, is destruction. And it's in the most difficult one, is the mode of goodness, in which
Sure.
through the mode of goodness is maintenance or stability, right? And so we are a culture. You see, if we were a culture trained in Bhagavad Gita, we would have been recognizing for a very long time that we are consuming junk food, you know, through our television, through our films, through our music, through so much, and celebrating that, you know, celebrating our own ignorance as
That's a good
freedom,
way to
and
put it.
yeah,
Celebrating our ignorance.
you know, you know, just engaging ourselves, you know, it's always been there, but you know, as we started getting into realms of like reality television,
I was going to
things
bring
like
it back
that,
to Jerry Springer myself. When we
yeah, I
started
mean,
celebrating
yeah.
Jerry Springer, I was like, where are we going with this?
Yeah. And so then it's like it's like if a person can, imagine you're a doctor, you understand, you know, about, you know, generally about what maintains a healthy body and so on. And someone that is just absolutely consuming junk food, you know, comes in with the symptoms of their disease and they're shocked that, why am I sick? Well,
Right.
all along you've just been consuming garbage. And so I see, you know, the American culture. You know, I love the American people and so on. But you know, when I look at our collective community of people, I see a group of people that are incapable of understanding what is right and wrong, understanding what is truth, incapable of choosing competent leaders, and you know, it starts to descend. You know, there's in the 18th chapter of the Gita, it says, you know, that understanding which considers adharma to be dharma and dharma to be adharma under the spell of illusion and darkness and always strives in the wrong direction, O Partha, is in the mode of ignorance. You know, and so I see this largely as, you know, where you see destruction, understand you just have to go behind it and you'll see where that mode of ignorance was, you know,
Mm.
where that cluelessness, you know, that led to it. And so I think, you know, on one hand, I feel like I've been anticipating things to go more and more in this direction. But I also feel that we're just getting kind of, you know, this whole past year and everything, you know, it's kind of it's meant to be a wake up call. You know, it's meant to be, it's meant to lead us to more thoroughly
Mm.
examine our lifestyles and what our priorities are.
Oh, I like
And
that.
yeah, yeah,
We
and
have to thoroughly examine our lifestyle.
yeah, both, you know, individually and collectively. Now we can
Sure.
do it. We can choose to do that individually. How do I treat people? How do I treat the animals? How do I treat the earth? Do I blindly, like a, you know, like an ignorant person, do I keep consuming? Do I actually even destroy that which is maintaining me? You know, the earth is maintaining us. You know, do
Mm.
we destroy it? Animals, they also maintain it. Do we destroy them? You know, do we carelessly, you know, move through this world not caring? You know, like you're saying, did you say there's a pride, you know, a certain pride in Americans?
Yeah, yeah. You feel secure. You feel like
Yeah,
above it.
we're above it all.
You know,
Yeah,
we're above these sort of like wonky tonk banana republics. You know,
right.
third world. Get your life together.
Yeah. And then we
Yeah.
see we don't have it together, and
Yeah, we
it
don't have it
becomes
together.
just give it enough time, you know.
Give
You
it-
see,
well, you know, we've really painted a good picture and projected ourselves, especially in Hollywood. But
hmm
also, you know, we're very clean on the outside. It's organized. The streets, you know, are pretty good, and you know, it looks together, but it's a very thin veil. And
yeah,
also, like the dirtiness. If there's no dirtiness on the outside per se, there's a lot of darkness on the inside
yeah,
as well.
yeah.
You
But you
know.
know, that's one way I'm looking. The other side of me is saying, you know, we can look at how unstable things are, in one sense, how dark things are, uh, and look at, yeah, look how unstable things are. But at the same time, if we have that, if we've individually chosen to consume the health food, right?
Right.
If wisdom, you know, in I'll say Bhagavatam, I'll say Bhagavad Gita, but quite frankly, you know, so many sources of wisdom, you know, spiritual truth, you know, whether it be biblical or whatever. We can feel a sense of stability as we pass through this, knowing that this world by nature is unstable, that our bodies by nature are unstable.
Right.
Mode of goodness can preserve them for a certain amount of time, and time
Right.
ultimately destroys everything. Right.
Right. It's not like you're going to take this special longevity mushroom and now I'm living. Thanks God for that mushroom tea, because now I'm living forever. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. But in recognizing the instability of the material realm, you know, the spiritualist is feeling a spiritual stability always, right? And that's where you had, right where we are in Bhagavatam, you know, Maharaj Pariksit is facing the instability, you know, materially. I know I'm cursed to die in 7 days in a pretty scary way. But he's like completely stable, right? Entirely stable. You know what? I don't need to eat. I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to sit down with really good people. I'm going to focus on spiritual truth, which is eternal, and realize my own eternality. And that's what spiritual wisdom is meant to give us. And that will preserve us individually and give us individual stability as we pass through these crazy times. And it also gives us the ability to kind of be an agent of good in the world and an agent of stability in the world to whatever extent we can. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I got to drive down here yesterday with my daughter. And today we're going to see Scott Bakos in Passyunk, Philadelphia. Finish my Lord Ram tattoo.
Okay.
Getting my Lord Ram tattoo there.
Okay, good.
But, you know, we just started talking about, me and my daughter had a great, you know, and she's 15.
A little father-daughter thing going on.
Father-daughter thing, very sweet.
Okay.
And then, you know, we just started talking about, like, instability and, you know, how are we supposed to be, you know, connected at the time of death, and what are we thinking about? Of course, we're going to reach out to family members and call out. And I said, yeah, it's true. Of course, we have attachment, but we have to always cultivate it with, it's sort of what I was saying yesterday in class, like we have material duties in this world as parents, as friends, as lovers, as a son to my mother. So those are our material, as our careers. We have a material duty and we take them seriously. But the whole time we have to cultivate that spiritual duty. Like I have a debt to my mom. I have a debt to you. You know, I have a debt to Mary. I have a debt to my wife. But we actually have a very big debt to Krishna. And we have to keep that in mind. Like I'm really in debt to Krishna and I don't want to neglect Krishna. And at these like critical moments where I'm like balancing these two debts out, there's going to be a time where there's no more material hope and there's just spiritual hope. And there's going to be a time when I have to like, and I have to sort of cultivate that throughout this life. I have our two duties, and then I'm going to have to relinquish that. And I told my daughter, I was like, listen, when I get to that point, I don't want you to be like, Dad, I'm going to miss you. I want you to say, Dad, we've cultivated this. Now go back to Krishna right now. You go back to Krishna right now.
Right.
I don't want you crying. I want you like encouraging me. I want you like singing to me and chanting to me.
Right.
You
I
know?
think that's great. You know, we should understand that we will come to a point where there's no more material hope.
Isn't that sad to say?
But
no more material hope.
But look at Pariksit. It wasn't for the person with the wisdom, because there's always the you know, the spiritual stability is always there. You know?
There's no hope. Yeah.
And
all
the
it takes is
clearer
a
that we
little.
realize,
Go ahead.
it's not pessimism, it's reality.
It's reality. I know.
Yeah.
It's not pessimism. If there was, it'd be pessimism if there's no spiritual hope as well.
That's
There's
right.
always great spiritual hope.
Right.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
But if all you're investing in is matter, there's no hope. That's our takeaway today.
Okay.
That's
There's
our
no
mug. That's our mug. Our Wisdom of the Sages mug. There's no hope.
No material
Good
hope.
morning.
Yeah. But you know, like you're saying, behind that, you know, or underneath that, or above that, whatever you want to call it, but beyond that material pessimism, if you want to call it that, which is actually reality, there's always spiritual optimism, which is also reality. That's the true optimism. You know, if you put all your optimism in material things, it's just a matter of time.
You know,
it all starts to unravel. You know,
because at any minute, you know, my mom's probably got like 25 stories she tells on repeat. Like every time I see her, she's got one of these 25
you're a
stories.
little like that, Raghu.
Well, this is one. If like, for example, because I'm going to Colombia and it's a tropical place.
Okay, so she
She
got a
has
tropical
her
story.
Famous all of her stories are tied into a fear-based reality.
That's that
So
time I
it's
went down to Florida and
yeah, it's going to be it's something like that. So she's like, yeah, you're going to a tropical place. Watch out for monkeys. I was like, because I know a couple that went on their honeymoon and they were up on a cliff and a monkey pushed them off a cliff. And I don't know where she gets these stories from, but I've been hearing that story since I was 11.
that's
To
love.
the point where
Raghu.
one time I was in Bali with my wife on a motorcycle, and there was like a cliff, and I was like, and it was a beautiful view, and there were a bunch of monkeys, and my wife is like saying to me, "Hey, let's pull over. There's some monkeys." I was like, "Monkeys on a cliff? Are you crazy?" But so my point is like, yeah, you can go on your honeymoon, and you could be pushed off a cliff by a monkey. You never, it's not like there's dread, there's dread, there's dread, there's dread, and then there's death. There could also be great rejoicing, and there's tragedy too. That's material life. And anybody who's a little bit thoughtful will get to that point, making some type of plan to enjoy the material world, and the material world has some other plan. So yeah, our real shelter is there's a spiritual shelter for us.
Yeah.
There's great spiritual hope. And that's what we hope to give here. That's what the Bhagavatam gives.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the great Bhakti figure, it's hard to say, writer, songwriter.
We've got to really push
philosopher.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We got to really
Push him? Okay.
make T-shirts like that. Push him in the public
Yeah,
arena.
He's great. Yeah.
He's
So
great.
he wrote in one of his songs that what is it that our existence in this material world is like a drop of water on a lotus leaf, right?
Kamala Jala.
Oh yeah, okay. let's hear
Kamala
it.
Jala. It's Narottam Das Thakur, isn't it?
No, I thought it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Bauja Huremana.
Yeah.
Our
Someone help us with that. Mara,
our man.
just look that
Our
up.
life is teetering like a drop of water on a lotus
It's
petal.
just very like non-absorbent, so it's just like it could slip off at any
Well, it's
moment.
waxy. It's waxy.
waxy,
If you drop water on a lotus, it's like dropping water on a duck.
Back of a duck, yeah, oily.
Yeah, because it beads. It's an
Yeah.
interesting phenomenon. It beads and then rolls off. So they say our life is like that. It's like dropping water on a lotus petal.
Here it is. Kamala Jaladala Jivana Talamala.
Isn't that beautiful? Kamala Jalamala Jivana Talamala.
Yeah.
Our life is like a drop of water. Therefore, you should always remember and and chant the name of Lord Hari.
Hang on to what is actually truly stable.
I remember first reading that when I was a new devotee. I was like, what?
Is it really?
But yeah, really? Life is short, so we got to chant the Hari.
But as you get older, it becomes more
I was
clear.
like, yes, we got to chant. Are we kidding? It makes so much more sense now.
Yeah.
But that's our life. We think it to be so secure, but it's like a little child. Here's the analogy I use. I don't use the drop because no one knows what lotuses are.
Nobody sees
I say it's
lotus.
like we are like an egg, and we are being carried around like the children's game where you have a spoon at a birthday party and you put an egg on the spoon and they have to have a relay race with the egg. Our life is like that egg. At any moment, just rolls off the spoon.
And Donald Trump has the spoon in his mouth.
Yeah, it's just it's just we're in a precarious situation.
Okay. But it's okay because we've got our the great sages have handed down, that stable truth. So let's hear it.
Yeah. We have an access point out of calamity. All right, so let's dive into we're winding up with our recap of the first two cantos. I think we finished Canto 1.
We did.
Did we?
Yep.
So let's do this.
We're at the cliffhanger.
Let's sing our sacred mantras.
Let's do it.
Before we enter the chamber. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam dato jayam mudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta priyeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will be eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurun militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my teachers have opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances at their feet.
Mayor has informed us that it was Govinda Das Kaviraj.
Govinda Das. I tried to correct you. See, I'm allowed to correct, but I have to be right if I'm going to
Well,
correct.
you're half right. At least you got that I was wrong.
Well, that's my specialty in showing how everybody's wrong, but not being right myself. Who's Govinda Das Kaviraj? Oh, he was the one that wrote the Govinda Lilamrita?
No, I think Govinda
That was Krishna.
Lilamrita was...
That's Krishna. That was also Krishna Das Kaviraj.
Yeah, Krishna Das Kaviraj.
But also Govinda Das Kaviraj, right?
I think that one song is the one that really
That was his
stands
hit.
out. That
Was he a one-hit wonder?
Well, it was a good one.
That sounds bad. It is a good one.
If you put out one hit like that, you've done well.
You're good.
Yeah.
By
But
the
we do
way,
have
if
to
you
push
really
Bhakti
wanna
Vinod
hear-
Thakur,
If you really want to hear that song well, it's done on the Mayapuris CD.
Huh?
The Mayapuris, the one where you play for the closing song, Jai Shri Krishna Bolo Jai Radhe. So they
Okay.
also do Bajahu Re Mana.
And of course, Jamuna Devi sang that song, right? But she did a little backwards or something like Bajahure Mana. Right?
Oh yeah, she
And
did.
that-
Okay. You and me are having a private time right now. Just okay. No one even knows what we're doing.
But we do need to push Bhakti Vinod Thakur very...
Well, he's a special guy.
Advanced
He's a
thinker.
special being. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think there's going to become a day where the entire world, like my family members, like not like brothers and sisters, and it's gonna Bhakti Vinod Thakur's name will be in the public. It'll be in the conversation. Like, yeah, see, Bhakti Vinod Thakur said that.
Yeah, like people...
Instead of quoting like
Yeah.
Benjamin Franklin, Bhakti Vinod Thakur.
Yeah.
I'm serious. It's going to be
Well, maybe on his next appearance or disappearance day, we can do a special on him.
a special Bhakti Vinod day. Okay,
Yeah.
that'd be great. All right. So we are in chapter 2 or canto
So
2.
we're at the cliffhanger, right? That Maharaj Pariksit now, facing the instability of his situation, that, without any fear, sat down at the bank of the Ganges River. Sometimes they actually say it was the Yamuna River, right? They say it was actually the Yamuna River. You know about that?
Really?
Yeah,
No.
like the verses say Ganges River, but like the commentators say it means the Yamuna here, because he was in Hastinapur and that's the river.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the sages have gathered, and then Shukadeva Goswami made his unique appearance, and then he asked, what are we meant? What does a person, particularly, all people, all humankind, and especially for a person who's about to die, what do we hear? What should we hear? What should we chant? What should we remember? What should we worship? He places that question and the canto ends. Right.
And then we're like, what? Right.
And so then in the second canto, in one sense, this is what the rest of the Bhagavatam will be. Maharaj Pariksit putting his questions before Shukadeva Goswami answering them. And what is his answer? Chapter 1, the first step in God realization, we hear about it. He says, Harinam Anukirtanam. Kirtan is what we should do, right? Hearing, the glories of, chanting the glories of, and through that remembering, and ultimately worshiping, meditating on. He says Hari, Hari Anukirtanam. The word kirtan, commonly when someone, says define kirtan, what do they say?
They'll say like, well, chanting with the harmonium or
call
something
and
like that.
response.
Yeah. But it's
And-
really just to speak, right?
Yeah, or to literally to glorify.
glor-
right? Like
yeah.
kirti means like fame or glory,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So kirtan means to glorify, you could say. So that does take place in song. It also takes place in readings and so on. But yeah. So Hari Anukirtanam. Anu, this is where we really need a Sanskrit person. But from my understanding, means to something that's continuous, or that one thing follows another. It's like a continuing chain or something like that, a continuing flow. So Hari Anukirtanam, glorify, what
We
should
could
you
really
do
end the
about
whole
today?
book right here, right?
Well, that's the
sort of
beginning
like,
and the
this is
end.
it, everybody. Okay.
Yeah, but then they
But the-
sit and they do it.
Yeah. And then they show different stories of people going through their stuff and how they apply this.
Yeah. This whole canto, the second canto, really, what we see is it has a lot to do with the creation. Like it's the questions that the next questions that'll be put forward by Maharaj Prik will have to do with like creation, the cycles of creation and destruction. How did this world get started? How did we end up in it? How did we get these bodies? What are we meant to do? It's kind of like a lot of it is about the creation. A lot of it will take place in a conversation between Narada and his father Brahma, who's like the secondary creator. But in the beginning, it's also wants to kind of establish bhakti yoga now very clearly. What am I meant to do? Well, really, you're meant to practice bhakti yoga. You're meant to reconnect with that divine root of all existence, the root that is ultimately the original creator of everything that we see in this world. And so that will be explained here. But to explain the necessity of bhakti yoga, it becomes compared to karma and jnana and mystic yoga. It's how it's the conclusion of all of those, or the fulfillment of all those, or the ultimate, the path that those other paths are meant to bring you to needs to be established. And so that'll happen in the early part of the first 3 chapters, I'd say. Chapters 1 through 3 explain the superiority of bhakti yoga over other paths. All right. And in this chapter 1, we actually hear about like one step towards that is meditating on the Virat Rupa, or the universal form, seeing the earth, the sky, the mountains, the rivers, all as the body of God, so that when I see nature, I think of God. But then chapter 2 will take it a step further, right? And it'll say that there's also God within the heart, the Paramatma. So chapter 2 is the Lord within the heart.
We tend to want one or the other. God is the ocean. God is the wind. God is the sky. That's how I perceive God.
Yeah. Well, why do you think people are more comfortable with that?
I think religion itself has really like become counterfeit, and people don't feel connected or trustworthy. But I think people also, there's another like demographic of people that they may not like it, but they appreciate the traditions of it, and they appreciate the rituals, and they appreciate the weekly mass or something like that. So yeah, I think some people have had such a soured experience that they're like, no, nature is my God. Surfing in the ocean is my God, or hiking in the wilderness is my God.
Yeah.
Or just doing yoga asanas. I feel like even a relief of endorphins, like jogging is my God, or something like that. So somewhere we feel sort of almost outer body. I'm doing it. I'm not letting the mind dictate. I'm controlling my senses. I'm feeling a connection with nature.
Something greater than myself.
Yeah, something greater than self. That's why I'm going to the Grand
Canyon. Not a person.
Yeah, or a mountain, but not a being I have to pray to. God forbid, dictated through some priest, some criminal priest or whatever like that. So, yeah. And there's that great analogy. Just because you've been dealt counterfeits doesn't mean there's not a real currency out there, right? Just because I've been dealing with counterfeits, and every time I use the counterfeit currency, I get arrested or I get in trouble. That doesn't mean there's not a real gold standard, a gold coin out there. And so we tend to want to throw everything away because we've either feel cheated or we've seen corrupt versions of it. And I'll say with even in India, I'm not just saying, the Catholic Church and blah, blah. I'm just saying even in India and ashrams, and even with like institution, like we spend time, you'll always see someone doing something wrong. You'll always see it's a society. Like any other society. So you always get some guy, this guy's doing something crazy. This guy's nefarious. This woman's done this. She said, just I have to throw a woman in there too, just to make it even. Although the women don't do anything bad. The woman's causing trouble. But the idea is like, there's cheaters, or there's people who can't live up to principles. That doesn't mean the principle itself is wrong. It just means there's people that can't live up to it. And people want to throw it all out. But even you and I, there's always a benefit with an institution and there's always a problem with an institution.
Yeah.
Once you organize anything, even a marriage, there's always problems. That's just part of people coming together. You throw a third person in there. That's like
That's real messy.
Yeah. Oh, forget it. Me and Mara, when we were doing before you, I think joined on. I can't with the Super Soul Sacred Sangha.
Oh yeah, okay.
Last year, we had this whole like 4 days of railing against religion, and then 4 days of like positive. Remember that, Mara?
Yeah, I do remember
I
that.
should go back and find that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. Like my analogy was like this. Suppose like I go to India and I meet some guru, and this guru gives me some information, some enlightenment, some truth, and I feel great about it, and I feel really joyous, and I love what this guy taught me or this woman taught me, and I like meditation. And then all of a sudden, I'm walking around Chatham, New York, and then I see Richard O, who's walking around Chatham, New York, and Richard O is like, "Hey, what's going on in your life?" I was like, "Well, I went to India and met this guru." You go, "You're kidding. I went to India and met this guru too." And we happened to go to India and meet the same guru. And so we're like, you know what we should do? Every morning, we should hang out and like chant together. Yeah, that'd be cool. And I learned how to make khichdi when I was in India. Oh, cool. Let's do that. Let's get together. We'll chant together. It'll be just nice. And then we'll make khichdi together. Yeah, that'll be nice. And then he says, "Well, I learned the harmonium. I learned this, song and this mantra." Okay, then we'll sing together. So we come together every morning. We think, "Hey, this is so fun. We do this together." And then a third person comes along, right? Then Mara comes along walking through Chatham. I went to India too. All of a sudden, we
need to make some rules.
There's got to be rules. Well, what time are we going to do this? We're going to do it at 6 a.m. every morning. And what time is it going to go to? Because I got work at 8. Okay, let's just do it for 2 hours. And all of a sudden, you can have some structure and you have some organization. And it's not structure or organization we hate. It's when people screw up that structure and organization. And every Sunday we decide, we got a cool thing going. Let's invite other people. Uh-oh. And that's called organized religion.
Organized religion.
So it's not like we hate organization. Organization's a great thing. But we hate when people are like in the name of organization and there becomes some rules. Okay, remember everybody's got to be here by 6. We try to close at 8. You know what I mean?
So it sounds like you're saying, like, if you're against organized religion, kind of what you're against is people coming together, because wherever you bring people together, you're going to need some kind of rules. You're going to need, and there's always going to be some kind of flaws.
There's going to be human foibles. Foibles, Mara. Human foibles. And yeah, there's organization. And then all of a sudden, suppose Mara starts acting crazy. Or Richard starts acting crazy, deal with it. And I didn't know, I didn't know how crazy these guys were. And then all of a sudden, some of the newer people coming around like, "What's up with Richard and Mara?" And then, I don't know. I didn't know they were that crazy. So it's one of those things where, you don't know who's coming to your group. And then we got to deal with these.
But don't reject the whole thing just because of Mara.
Yeah, but we can't say, okay, well, we got to make a rule. Let's get together with the rest of us. Should Mara be allowed to come to our little group any longer? And then
then you got the justice mercy thing going on,
Yeah, and then you have a group of new people who are like, I was like, I appreciate she's one of the founding members. And then you got these new people like, I know, but look at all this crazy stuff she's doing. So anyway, it's one of those things like it's a very normal. And I think that we sort of got into Krishna at a very low point. So this is the bad part of organization. Yeah, but let me just share the high point of organization is it could have been, our guru's Guru Prabhupada, he didn't have to come to America. He was doing fine in India. He's living in Vrindavan. He's chanting the holy name. He's like in a very culture that's conducive with spiritual life. And he took that risk and came and gave it away. And then a bunch of Americans screwing things up. At its most screwed up time, me and Kaustubha got into it.
Yeah, when it was really unraveling.
When it was really unraveled, like Rome had fallen in the Krishna consciousness movement. Right. And you know what's the interesting thing is? It saved our life.
Yeah.
Like it gave us so much depth and love and hope. And so there's a beauty about organization, even when the organization is a complete disaster.
Right.
There's a beauty of it as well.
Well, they say, it's kind of like there is, I believe it's an Indian metaphor. and it's not a pleasant one, but in any case, they say that even a dead elephant, right, is so valuable. I don't know. In other words, a live elephant, it's got so much power, and so but even a dead elephant is like it's. I assume its body and its tusk and all that are so valuable. But it's kind of a very crude analogy, but
Even a
it's meant to
broken
show that,
clock.
yeah, okay, broken clock, but even even an institution, a flawed institution can deliver so much. you know.
Sure.
And I was interviewed yesterday by Chaitanya Charan
Okay,
for
Chaitanya
his
Charan, if you missed him, was a great. He's from India.
yeah.
He's very, very learned. He does a podcast, YouTube channels, quite sharp being. So if you haven't
Yeah.
heard that show, check out our interview days.
That was a
Chaitanya
few weeks
Charan.
ago. Yeah, I'd say he's certainly very learned, but what you said second is like it's his sharpness. We spoke for over 2.5 hours, and he would ask me a question, and I would ramble on a bit, and then he would crystallize exactly what I said, just like far better than I could have ever said it. His ability to analyze and to codify, is just like off the charts.
Off the charts.
And so he asked me about our podcast, and he said, it seems like what you're doing is kind of it's beyond the institution. It's kind of like it's reaching out in ways that are non-institutional and so on. But at the same time, you're connected to the institution. Like, how do you deal with that? And I said,
Am I connected to the institution?
you
I don't
are.
even feel like I don't feel like
You
connected.
just were saying how much it's given you and everything.
Well, yeah, in that sense, yeah.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
if it wasn't for that, I mean, this is our institution. Zoom is our institution now.
Yeah. People are asking if it's available. It'll be available probably in a couple days on YouTube. I'll post it on my Facebook when it comes out. But so he asked about that, and I said more or less the kind of thing that you just said. That is like, well, we don't feel like we're necessarily responsible for the institution, and it's not like our goal is necessarily to tie someone to the institution.
Yeah,
But
that's
but
not
yeah,
a
but
home
when we
run for us.
right, but when we speak honestly, we can't help but say the institution has given us, all that we have in a sense, so we can't help but feel grateful. And so, I rambled on for some time about that, and then he just like in a really concise way, just like
Crystallized it.
yeah, it was like I wish I had it completely in my mind, but when it comes out, we'll find it. But he said more or less what he said is, so what you're saying is that it's not that that the institution has to be spiritual. In other words, we expect the institution to be pristine and perfect and spiritual, but rather it's like the institution is providing, spirituality or spiritual content that you can take advantage of, that you can benefit from. So in that sense, the institution serves its purpose. It's provided that spiritual substance that we've benefited from. There's no question about it.
For
So
sure.
we don't have to expect the institution, all its people, and all its participants to be flawless. But and even though it's flawed, we've benefited so much from the spiritual content that is provided.
In its most, crippled time, perhaps.
Well, back then, yeah, I'd say like
Yeah.
in the mid '80s, whatever,
Yeah.
late '80s, and so therefore we feel nothing but gratitude. Really, we could. It's not that we're blind to the flaws,
Sure.
but if you feel gratitude and then you do your best to make it better,
Sure.
then that's actually, to me, that's the more. We also talked about, how, some people are more institutional in their thought by nature, right?
Sure.
They think institutionally. Their tendency will always be to support and not criticize the institution. Maybe to paint a rosy picture, a rosier than accurate picture of the institution.
And then the converse is true. Oh,
Then-
did you
yeah.
did you finish that
Well,
statement?
then I say, and then there's a group of people, a group of thinkers that they may see more deeply, or they may feel that they see more deeply, right?
Right.
And they point out the flaws in the institution, and they're saying that the institution isn't actually getting to the real substance. I connect with the real substance. The institution doesn't. There can be pride there, um, and I said, but I find like the deepest, they're truly deep thinkers, and then they reject the institution and criticize the institution,
Right, right.
and then, but the real deep thinkers are the ones that can see the institution for what it is,
Sure.
that can also see what's beyond the institution and benefit from and see the same truth outside the institution,
Right.
not only engage outside the institution, but even gain from outside the institution, like even benefit from that which is outside the institution, at the same time support and better the institution, right?
Mm.
To me, those are those are the ones that are actually the most detached and seeing reality the most clear. So I said, like, it's been my observation that often the deepest thinkers and the deepest spiritualists, they exist kind of on the border of the institutions,
Sure.
right, on the edges of the institutions. That they are part of the institution, they support the institution, they can see the flaws in the institution, they may be misunderstood within the institution. Like those
Well,
real institutional thinkers may say, "Oh, they're going off. They're going overboard or something like that."
I think there is like no one wants to join the Walmart of churches. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's sort of like, all right, you find some guru or some teacher who lives in a hut or a cave, you get some spiritual insight, and then what do you do with it? Unless you live in that cave with them,
Right,
but
right.
if you want to like walk it back to your hometown, to Chatham, New York, it's sort of like it's hard because we like communities, we like friends, we like, so there is some like good benefits of the institution. And I have seen like great thinkers, great writers, great thoughtful people. And if they don't write books and if they don't establish institutions, it just gets buried in time,
Mhm.
like 10 years, 20 years after their death. And then it becomes lost. And this, it's happened. I mean, we've witnessed within our lifetime a resurrection of Ayurveda, of Vedic astrology, of
Mhm.
like Vedic physics and mathematics, of spiritual teachings, of metaphysical teachings, of Indian dance. We've witnessed it all, of music. We've witnessed it all being resurrected. But in a moment, it could have been like Gaelic or Navajo, like languages that are just becoming like basically extinct. There's so many languages, or Basque, these, right? They're just like, give them a couple decades and no one will be, you won't see these any longer. So it's interesting, and I think it's like there is like a relevance to printing literature and like establishing this is an ashram, this is how an ashram should act and behave, and it just comes together. It comes together from us wanting to be together with other people, and I think it's like an important thing, and I appreciate it as
Okay,
much as it's got issues.
so we got into this whole thing
How do we
with
get into this?
with the
It's an
question.
important tangent, but I can't remember how we
Yeah,
got here.
the question was, why are people hesitant to conceive of God as a person, where they're much more comfortable with conceiving of God, say, as nature,
Oh yeah,
right?
that's right. That's
And,
right.
and
That's how we
yeah,
got there.
so here we see, like, in chapters in the second canto, progressing from chapter 1 to chapter 2 to chapter 3. In the beginning of chapter 1 of the second canto, Shukadeva Goswami will establish that bhakti is the path, the path that the other paths are meant to lead to, and that from which one derives the ultimate spiritual fulfillment. Um, and then he begins to describe one way to conceive of that divine being that you're meant to connect with is by recognizing nature as being that being, and that's a mental, kind of like a mental adjustment or a mental,
Important, also
yeah,
important.
important. Then he progresses in chapter 2 to conceiving of that divine existence as God within the heart, the Paramama. So chapter 2 is called the Lord within the heart. So he's going a progression, one step to the next, deeper, right?
Also
Deeper.
important. God is
Yeah.
in the heart.
And there you get some amazing, there's these, let me read just text 2 and 3 from the second chapter of the second canto. So this would be 222.
222.
and 222 and 223. The way, he says, the way of presentation of Vedic sounds. And now he's talking about where the materialistic Veda, the Vedas, how the Vedas speak about how to be a dynamic, successful materialist.
Mm.
And he's trying to take him beyond that. So he's saying the way of presentation of the Vedic sounds is so bewildering that it directs the intelligence of people to meaningless things like heavenly kingdoms, right? Trying to live a heavenly life in the material realm.
Mm.
The conditioned souls hover in dreams of such heavenly illusory pleasures, but actually they do not relish any tangible happiness in such places. For this reason, the enlightened person should endeavor only for the minimum necessities of life while in the world of names, while in the virtual reality, right? He should be so intelligently fixed and never endeavor for unwanted things, being competent to perceive practically that all such endeavors are merely hard labor for nothing. And then there's a series of famous verses where he says, for instance, like he starts in text 4, where when there are ample earthly flats to lie on, what is the necessity of cots and beds? When one can use their own arms, what is the necessity of a pillow?
I sort of like a pillow, though.
No, you gotta see, but the problem is, as soon as you get the pillow, right?
You need a pillowcase.
You need a pillowcase.
You need a washing machine.
You need a washing machine. You need another.
Why not
job.
just get used to your arms? I slept on that floor every day in that ashram, and I loved it. I slept on a flat mat, like a cushion over my back, and then my butt was on the floor.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I felt good. I can't do that much anymore. I got to work on it because I cannot. I need a bed.
When I was a brahmachari, that's how the way that I would sleep. My pillow would be, I would take my sweater, and the dhoti that I was wearing that day, I would wrap around the sweater, and that would be my pillow.
I wonder if it's an age thing. Like my 6-year-old can sleep anywhere.
I think you could do
it. If I
it.
say sleep in the corner, he'll just fall asleep in the corner.
I think you could do it if you had to. Yeah.
Maybe. Raghunath Swami still sleeps on the floor.
He does.
He comes over our house, and we just say, "Here, we got this bed for you." He'll go, "Okay, thank you," and then you go back in later. He's got he's on the floor. Just sleeping on the floor.
I did that in my place too. Yeah. Yeah. So
I think there is some like mystical transference of karma when you sleep in another person's bed.
I think anything, you wear someone's clothes, you sleep in someone's bed.
It's like a Vedic thing. You don't wear other people's shoes.
He was avoiding our bed because of the karma.
God knows what's going to come through that bed of mine. Some spirit, evil, demented spirit.
Goblin.
But also, it's an Indian thing. You don't wear other people's shoes either. I think even the shaking of hands is not like a
well, at the beginning of the whole COVID thing, everyone was saying the Indian way is the way to go, right? It's like
the Indians do all these like little rituals, like things like you don't open doors with your hands, and you don't, you're always wiping. It's almost like OCD, but it's like Indian stuff. Mm-hmm. But put on the shoes of other people, put on other people's clothes. Like we're like, hey, I got this great vintage thing at the thrift shop. Indians be like, are you crazy?
Don't ever buy anything.
Don't ever buy vintage anything.
Yeah. So in any case, there's a whole series of verses that are describing, they're encouraging simple living, right? They're encouraging that we endeavor, keep our necessities, our quote unquote necessities, simplified.
Yeah.
And it's from that platform that we're going to be able to understand, to meditate and to see truth. Yeah. And so that's described. And then he goes into description of understanding the Lord within the heart, and that we can meditate on the Lord within the heart like that. All right. Conceiving of him, actually a whole description of the Paramatma is given there in detail, what he looks like and so on. It's a beautiful chapter. But then in chapter 3.
And this is where it gets real.
Yeah. Going from beyond seeing God as nature, beyond seeing God, and that's true. No harm in that. That's great. If that's where you're at, because and I mean, I don't mean to be too judgmental here, but I would say, I asked you the question, why are people hesitant? And I think your answer is kind of more or less the same way I would answer. But psychologically, I have a hard time swallowing it. It may not even be rationally. Right, because rationally, I don't think there are a lot of good arguments, but I'd say, I would say psychologically, I have a hard time swallowing it.
Well, go on. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, there's we got to bring in our Christian scholars for this one, but it seems like within Christianity they did the flip flop of this. They've deified a being, and everything else is a mundane backdrop for a divine being.
Right.
You went from
This is
paganism, which there's spirit in everything, and everything's a spirit being, and
right.
there's the spirit of the plant, and that's not just paganism. That's like a lot of traditional cultures believe that. But then they said, no, 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 no. There is one divine being. Everything else is just nothing. It's got nothing. And your
Right.
real spirituality is with Lord Jesus Christ, and everything else is nothing. So I think there it is important to recognize, the spirit in nature, and
Well,
everything is of God.
that's what's happening in Bhagavatam is it's trying to describe the divine in relation to the divine's energies,
Mm,
right? So in one sense, everything is divine because everything is the energy of the divine. But it's more nuanced than that, right? But also there is that divine source of everything, which not only manifests in nature and not only manifests in the heart, but is also manifest as a person, right? And that aspect of personality, is something that is not only, it doesn't manifest mechanically or randomly or by chance. It's at the very origin of all creation. It's at the very root is personality. And so here we see, chapter 1 again is like, okay, I can see God in nature. And chapter 2 is so in other words, don't disassociate the energy of the divine from the divine,
mm.
right? Like you're saying, certain religions may do, right? To recognize the divinity and respect the divinity, everywhere. But at the same time, understand that there's also God within the heart. That's the localized, it's a deeper understanding. And still deeper is understanding God as a person. So chapter 3 will go there, and that chapter is called Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart, where Bhakti is established as it's actually this, that's where you get the famous verse at the beginning of chapter 3, akama sarva kama va, right? Moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena. That whether you're full of material desire, right? Whether you're free of material desire,
Akarma,
akama,
whether you have
akama,
no desire
yeah,
or
sarva kama,
sarvakama, full of kama,
yeah, or moksha kama,
or mokshakama.
you desire liberation from material suffering.
I think I'm sarvakama.
We have to
I'm
feel like all three
full of kama.
sometimes. Yeah.
I got tons of
But
desires.
so whether you're deeply spiritually advanced or not, right? He says bhakti is still going to be the most intelligent path to follow, right? Connecting with that divine source. And
But
so,
then we become. Sorry, I don't want to.
well, so he says that's what's going to give complete satisfaction to the self. And he also says that life is wasted. This opportunity of human life is wasted if we don't take to it, right?
Mm.
And that's
So
where you get a whole nother series of interesting verses. But go ahead.
Well, we become like these. The yogi becomes like the alchemist, where we take everything of this world, because it is spiritual energy, and if you use it as an offering, that matter becomes re-spiritualized. This is what we do with our harmonium. If our harmonium is used for my ego, it's just a material thing. If our computer is used for our own ego, it's a material thing. If we can use anything of this material world, which is God's energy, we're actually reconnecting it with spirit. And that very same thing of matter, which can bind us to the material world, is now liberating us out. And that's sort of like the alchemy. We're turning the most mundane elements into gold, so to speak.
Nice. So there again in chapter 3, it's going to, you see what it does is it gives this whole list of like, hey, if you want to be a materialist, even following the teachings of the Vedas, if you want to enjoy material life more, there's ways that it can be done. And list, if you want this, if you want longevity of life, you worship this deva. And if you want, material strength, you worship the earth. And if you want this, you worship that. And if you want, the whole list is given. But then, you get that verse, akama sarvakama va. But wherever you're at, the best thing is actually to focus on that divine source, Sri Krishna, because all the other devas are ultimately empowered by him. And so then you get that famous verse, text 17 of the third chapter, Ayur Harati Vai Pungsa, that both by the rising and the setting of the sun,
Oh yeah.
right? The duration
Rising
of
and
life
setting
of
the sun
everyone is
diminishes the life of everyone except
Yeah.
for those who are.
discussing the topics of the all good personality of God, or engaged in that direct. He asked, what is the person who's about to die meant to do? You hear and discuss the glories of Sri Krishna. So
And it
for
takes
those
you
that are
right
doing
out
that,
of the.
yeah.
It takes you right out of the time factor.
takes you right out of the time. That's the stability, right? That's the true stability, where we began today, right? And then he goes on to say, that life is wasted if we don't take to it. That's you're in the human body. All the Vedic literature is bringing you to that point. Don't waste the opportunity to reconnect. But there's so many other things I could do. Well, don't, those things aren't important. A human being can do more. And so he says, do the trees not live? Do the bellows of the blacksmith not breathe? All around us, do the beasts not eat? And then he says, men who are like hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, they praise other people. They praise other men who never listen to these transcendental pastimes, who never engage in the process of hearing and chanting of bhakti yoga. But one who misses out on that, they're really missing out on the value of life. So their tongue, is like the tongue of a frog. Their ears are like the ear holes of a snake. And he goes on and on. This list of how the body, we're given the human body and how we're wasting it if we're not engaging in bhakti yoga. Great chapter. I think we're out of time, though, huh? There you go.
Woo! Another class. What number class was that, Mara?
335.
335. It's my
Episode.
birthday week, Kaustubha.
Oh, yeah. I forgot all about
Birthday
that.
week.
It's my birthday week.
I didn't know you had a week.
everybody.
Okay.
Just putting it out there.
How do the festivities begin?
Huh?
Will there be a ceremony?
I'll figure out something.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Every day we're doing this. It's wonderful. Sharing the Bhagavatam, hearing the Bhagavatam, speaking the Bhagavatam. Life is short. What else we got to do? Wisdom of the Sages is a community-supported podcast, and we want to thank everybody who's really supporting us. It really makes a difference to help this boat keep floating. If you'd like to support us and you think what we're doing is a good thing and you're getting something valuable at it, go to patreon.com/wisdomofthesages and make a monthly pledge, whatever you like to give, and we really appreciate it.
We have a Bhakti recovery
Right, we
group
just
meeting
ran out of
today at
words.
noon. Yeah, I've never seen that happen
Nothing
before.
to say anymore. We have a Bhakti recovery group when?
At noon today, and Lisa Bermudez is teaching a 10 a.m. asana class for our Patreon members.
Lisa
Yeah.
B, the fearless.
Yeah.
Lisa B.
Yoga for parachuters, we call it.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Skydivers.